John McMullen on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, 97.3 ESPN.com at JF McMullen. Johnny Mac, how are you, sir?
Doing well. I'm assuming they didn't show you on the Jumbotron, because you obviously would have got the biggest cheer.
I was not available with the cameraman.
By the way, they should have put Carson and Alshon on the kiss can.
They also put Robert Kraft up there. He got a nice Bronx cheer, as did Magic Johnson, who got shown. Little Uzi was also, and M. Night Shyamalan.
Little Uzi.
Yes.
Little Uzi didn't realize he was at a basketball game.
Yeah, Ooze was there. And M. Night Shyamalan rang the bell yesterday. He was the opening bell ringer for the show. I'll tell you what, Tobias Harris, the first night he's there, on Friday night, gets Doc and the 83 Charles, Iverson, and then he gets the treatment of what he got yesterday. You would have thought, like, hey, the guy played in Los Angeles, He was in L.A. We always hear about how L.A. is the place to be. That Sixer Arena is the place to be, man. It is seen and be seen at that joint.
Yeah, well, Los Angeles obviously is it's rare here, and obviously it has to do with the Sixers being successful. Los Angeles, it's always going to be like that. So, that's already people are concerned about Ben Simmons. And rightfully so, it's going to be a while. But that's where he's going to be. I hate to break it to everyone.
I don't know. We'll see. All right, let's get into everybody has been talking. In fact, John, we tweeted out, what are you watching Saturday night? 48% of our listeners and followers on Twitter were watching AAF football. How about you?
Yeah, I tuned in a little bit, and the ratings, I mean, they surpassed the biggest NBA game of the weekend. So it kind of tells you where football is in this society. It's still, so far more popular than any other sport. And it's evidenced by the fact nobody knows the players, nobody knows the teams, there's no history, and people are still watching it. Ultimately, I don't think that's going to hold up at that level, but we'll see. I thought it was a good first impression. You can never get a first impression back, and I tweeted this out earlier. You think about the change in the television landscape over 2 decades. The original XFL was, I think, 2001. As impressive as those ratings were, they were about 20% of what the XFL did in their first game way back then. The difference is the XFL embarrassed itself, and I thought the AAF did a pretty good job, at least for a first impression. And you can never get that first impression again, so that was really important.
Yeah, and the question is, they basically came right out and said, we're a developmental league. We're not a competition. We're developmental. Can a league, you wrote about this today, about the offensive line play, and I talked about the quarterback play. I mean, the problem is they can't get anybody to play quarterback in that league. The NFL's got anybody who can half play quarterback. So can a league survive, touting itself as a developmental league? In other words, you got guys who they're developing to play offensive line and developing to play quarterback, as opposed to say, hey, let's go out and get Johnny Manziel. Let's go out and get Mark Sanchez. Let's go out and get, a guy who has name recognition who's at the end of the line. They're going another route.
Yeah, and I've said it a lot. I don't think it can succeed at the level that they were on opening night, and that's on CBS prime time, major network. I don't think a developmental league ultimately lands in that spot. If you go back to the USFL, now think about some of the superstars that were in that league. They were fighting for talent, and they got talent, whether it was Herschel Walker, Reggie White, Anthony Carter, big-time players at that time, and they weren't successful. So I don't think, if you look at minor league baseball, if you look at the G League in the NBA, I think you can succeed as a subsidy, as an affiliate, if you can get the NFL on board. But I don't think you can succeed primetime national television, network television, as a secondary league. I just don't think it's possible.
John, I asked this question earlier, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this question, so I'm posing it. How does this league make money? Like, I feel like their ads aren't there.
I wrote about that today on 973ESPN.com, and that's where the subsidy has to come in.
Yeah.
Look, minor league baseball teams, they can't exist on their own. They're subsidized by the big league clubs. And if the NFL gets on board, there's no issue. If they don't get on board, then you got to make money and generate revenue on your own. How are you going to do that long term? I don't know. Yeah. And then the second part is the talent, and I wrote about Jordan Mailata specifically because Jeff Stoutland talked about it earlier this last season. We talked to him because the AAF was coming, and that's like the perfect guy for that type of league. And, Jeff was pretty honest and said anybody gets better with repetitions and live repetitions, and they're limited in today's NFL world because of CBA restrictions. And he called them bars of gold. And then we got to the money question. Well, would you allow somebody like Jordan Mailata to play in that league? And the answer was no, because coaches in the NFL, they don't want to give away their prospects to other coaches, and maybe they're teaching them different techniques and doing things differently. They don't want a part of that. So it's really, really difficult landscape. And as I said, right now it's going to be unaffiliated players.
Right,
because NFL coaches don't want their coaching upended by somebody else.
Right, because we were talking about like a guy like Nate Sudfeld that can go get reps and play all spring, but now you just brought up a point that you got to learn a whole new offense. You don't want somebody tweaking with them. So, again, it goes back to the only way this really would work is if the NFL, like if the Eagles had their own AAF team, which they don't want to put the money into.
Exactly. And the NFL has the money to do it. And the question becomes, are you going to create sort of a baseball environment where all 32 teams have it? Because you almost would have to do that. You can't even share teams because, again, the bigger issue from more than money, because I think teams would value that as an investment if it got them better players. But the issue becomes coaching and the changing and the shifting of coaching. And by the way, I think it's short-sighted because I also referenced the World League. And to me, the legacy of the World League is Kurt Warner and Brad Johnson and Jake Delhomme and quarterbacks like that who got better playing in that league. Same setup. They weren't affiliated. It was different coaches, but they got better. But they got better with reps. And I'll be honest with you, I think it's ego. I think these coaches are too hyped up in their own ego, and they think somebody else is going to screw up their player, whereas history says, you know what? If they're playing, especially at certain positions, quarterback, offensive line, they're going to get better. Unless it's total incompetency. And we've seen some of the coaching names in this league. They're former NFL guys, former high-level college guys. I think it would be valuable, but the teams think about things differently, and specifically the coaches do.
John, I mean, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but it would be very important for this team's long-term success for the NFL to get involved. Why would the NFL get involved, and why most likely won't they get involved?
Well, why they would get involved is the fact that you talk to scouts in this league, and I talk to a lot, and I talk to a lot of assistant coaches, and they complain about how things are being done at the college level and how guys are being taught, especially at certain positions. And really it's those two that always come up first, and it's quarterback and it's offensive linemen. They think they're being done a disservice at the college level. So if you can create a learning curve, a learning system for them that gets them better prepared and develop them better for the NFL, well, that's obviously helpful. Why it wouldn't work is what I just said about the coaching. There's an ego aspect to this that's real. And look, it's, guys will look at other teams in this league and say, well, he's in a bad system. He's not going to mold to our system. he was taught poorly, and they're just not going to accept so-called minor league coaches getting their hands on valuable prospects, as I brought up Jordan Mailata, in the same conversation. Stout, who's a very good coach, is saying it's bars of gold, and then coming back and saying, but I don't want anybody else to touch him, essentially. And that's what he said.
What do you think about the, what's being talked about the most since Saturday and yesterday? I feel like not as many people were tuned in, but on what they're doing differently than the NFL as far as reviewing plays, pace of the game, anything else that you noticed Saturday that you said to yourself, man,
right off the bat, there was a lot of positives
lot
that people are talking about that the NFL could snatch.
Absolutely. So, John, what did you think of those things?
I thought the biggest thing that people liked was the transparency of the review system and having the microphone so you see exactly what they're thinking. And a lot of people talk about transparency. I'm not sure the NFL is going to go for that. I'm not sure they want that kind of transparency. Some of the other issues, no kickoffs. Look, I don't like that. I think it's one of the most exciting parts of the game. Although with the kickoff changes, one of the unintended consequences of that, changing the rules in the NFL, was the basic elimination of the possibility of recovering an onside kick late in the game. The percentages really dipped to the point it's just impossible almost. So they have that rule where I think it's 4th and 12 deep in your territory. And if you turn it over, you turn it over. All that seems too gimmicky to me for this league, but I don't know. We're in a different generation. I'll be first to admit. I mean, this younger generation thinks about things differently, and sometimes they like gimmicks. Their overtime rule is very gimmicky. I don't know. Personally, I don't like it. But, again, there's a lot of people that like gimmicks, and maybe that's the way we're going.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be the kind of league where we're going to be coming on here on a Monday breaking down games with you as much of like, oh, what would you have thrown about, like stuff like that. But like I said, it's not so much rooting interest. Like I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm a Hot Shot fan or I'm jumping on board with the Apollos.
I'm a Hot Shot.
Right, but there's a football game on Saturday night, and if I'm out having a cocktail with a buddy, I don't mind that it's on in the background. But now you're really going to – do you think adding the XFL is a positive or a negative to the league?
A negative. I think it's positive for the players because you're going to have – the XFL has already earmarked a lot more money for quarterbacks, for instance. So it's going to be interesting. All AAF contracts are the same. They're 3 years for $250,000. It goes from 70 to 80, and the third year is 100,000. And there's outs for NFL after every season, so it is essentially set up as a true developmental league. The XFL is going to be a little bit different, specifically with coaches and quarterbacks. They're paying coaches $500,000. They're paying quarterbacks $250,000. That's not a lot by NFL circumstances, but you can see $250,000 for 1 year versus $250,000 for 3 years. So in theory, they're going to get the best quarterbacks that aren't in the NFL. But as we saw from the AAF right now, let's be honest, there's not enough. Forget about 96. There's not 64 NFL level quarterbacks. So you saw some of the horrible quarterback play, horrible offensive line play. It's going to continue in the XFL. I'm just not sure how either league succeeds long-term on its own. I think the only way it succeeds is as a true affiliate system, and I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Let's get a couple of NFL thoughts from you. Kyler Murray has decided he is going to play football. Smart move, or would you have gone baseball if you're Kyler Murray?
Yeah, personally, I'd go baseball because you You have a chance. You don't have the same health concerns. You have a chance to have a much longer career and make a lot more money. So just from that circumstance, I think baseball is always the better choice if you have that opportunity. And he was a high-level pick in baseball as well. But he's made his decision. And if you love the particular sport and that's what he likes better, God bless him. He's given back. I think he had a $5 million signing bonus with the A's, and he's got to pay the majority of it back. So he's all in on football.
Yeah, and there's some reports out here that some of the people from the Giants organization anyway think that he's too small. So we'll see, because they're a team that needs a quarterback, and that's not a good sign. But he'll get drafted probably too high. We'll see. Big news today. The Browns have signed Kareem Hunt before his suspension has been announced. So do you like the fact that the Browns jumped the gun here and said, you know what, we'll take the hit, we'll do it in the offseason, and we'll get it out of the way?
Yeah, we talked about that. Somebody was going to do it. People speculated Chicago. Even, certain people said Philadelphia because the Andy Reid offense and obviously Matt Nagy with the Bears, Doug Peterson here with the Eagles. Turned out it was one of those type things. John Dorsey, who was with the Chiefs when he got drafted, and he's from Cleveland. He's from a suburb of Cleveland. Obviously went to Toledo in college, so he's got some comfort with the area. He's too talented, was always going to get a second opportunity. The Browns, a little bit surprised only because they're pretty good at running back already. So now you have what has been an all-pro level back thrown into the mix. I'm sure he's going to be suspended. He's going to start on the commissioner's exempt list in Cleveland, obviously. And so it's interesting. It's low risk, high reward. It's a one-year deal. Even after this year, he'll be a restricted free agent. Cleveland will own his rights. So from a football standpoint, it's sort of a no-brainer. But obviously they're taking some PR hits and some significant PR hits, and they're willing to do it.
John, there's been news, quote-unquote news, today on social media that the Philadelphia Eagles Instagram account has refollowed/started following LeGarrette Blount on Instagram. Is there anything to that, or do people need to get a life?
People need to get a life.
All right, fair enough.
It's more important if the Eagles were watching film of LeGarrette Blount in Detroit, because they probably don't want him if they saw that. He's a good guy. Fit in very well when he was here, and people speculated maybe he wouldn't. He was very successful, but he's an aging guy. He's coming off a really bad year. It was evident when he was here. I mean, the Eagles made the trade for Jay Ajayi in season because they thought they had to get better. No, they need a running back, and they need a better running back and a more well-rounded running back than LeGarrette Blount.
Is it a significant move today that the Panthers re-signed Eric Reid to a 3-year, $22 million contract?
Well, significant in what way? For the people who I don't know, for the people on the Colin Kaepernick bandwagon, for the people hoping he wins the collusion grievance, it's not a good day for them. It's a pretty good contract in what has been a very difficult market for safeties in the NFL. So it depends how you want to look at it. I mean, people will spin it like the NFL's doing it to win a collusion grievance. Anybody who's listened to the show, listen to me talk about it. They are in no matter who you want to read, no matter what they're saying to you, no matter what they're lying to you about, they were never going to lose that collusion grievance. Never, 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 never. So it doesn't have relevance to that. It's just the Carolina Panthers.
Reid says it's going to help his case. He says, quote, if anything, it proves my point from last year. I didn't sign until a few weeks into the regular season. This year, I signed a more substantial contract over the same time period. I'm the same player.
He can think that. Obviously, he's got some anger issues towards the league. There's no question about it. It's incredibly difficult to prove collusion in that type of environment from a legal standpoint, which is the bigger issue. The second part is it's impossible to prove it when you're offered contracts and you turn them down, which is what happened with Eric Reed. Now, he thought he deserved more money, and that's a legitimate complaint. But it's kind of hard to say the league is trying to ban you when you're being offered contracts. It's just, and it's kind of absurd, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. A lot of NFL conversation. The scouting combine coming up March 1st. That's on the way. The draft's going to be here. We got so much NFL going on the offseason, by the way. Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffrey were sitting next to each other. They seemed very happy. They seemed like they were very peachy. Well, we got
I think the Sixers missed a brilliant opportunity not putting the kiss cam on there.
Yeah.
Do they still do the kiss cam?
Yeah. From time,
not as much.
They change it up there. The Sixers, I got to tell you, the Sixers are excellent. It's like an amusement park in that place at a timeout. Your neck is turning all over the place.
It's a show, man.
But I got a beef. With Matt Cord yesterday.
Oh.
All right?
Wow.
I'll bring that up.
Where are you guys with Matt Cord? See, you guys, Ryan's way too young, but anybody who remembers Dave Zinkoff, I mean, Matt Cord,
wow.
But he's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a super nice
Okay.
guy. I think he does a fine job in terms of, he says it, but yesterday he gets on now. I get it. They're on national TV, and they do this all the time before the games. He'll say, "It's Philly, it's LA, we're on national TV." But he said, "It's one of the biggest games of the year. It's Philly, it's LeBron." I'm like, they're 28 and 27. How's this? You just put them up on a pedestal they don't deserve to be on, and you lowered your own teams. Your team, this isn't a big game. You should blow that team out. That's what I didn't like.
Well,
it's LeBron.
It is
that's my point.
You
don't put
guys
him on a pedestal he doesn't need to be on.
Well, you guys pointed out something in the fact that all NBA games, it's not just the Sixers, have turned into that, where the timeouts, and there's always something going on in the arena. Short attention span. They're trying to keep people into it, keep people interested.
They do a good job. I got to give them credit. All right, more AAF football this weekend. We will dive into it on Monday's show. More football tomorrow. Johnny Mac's in the house. Take care, pal.
All right, thanks, guys.